Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Lobby Talks by the GrowthWorks. My name is James Lemon. I'm the founder of Atollo. We're a mentoring and hospitality community where anyone passionate about hospitality can reach their potential through mentorship, content, and connection with the industry. We set up Lobby Talks during the summer of 2021. We were recognizing that it's a really tough time for hospitality. People are questioning whether it's the right industry for them and what the future might hold. But we genuinely think that meeting industry leaders and exploring the ideas of leaders in the industry is a great way to attract, develop, and retain people in an industry that we love because we get to deliver great experiences and services. So each week we get really interesting guests from around the industry, and I've been really looking forward to this one. Today we're going to be meeting Bradly Sax, who's been a mentor with Atollo for the best part of a year, and I've always enjoyed our chats with his wealth of international experience across big global operations and his absolute passion for people and giving back. So keen to explore his highs and lows. Bradly, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
No, pleasure's all ours. Pleasure's all ours. So, look, unfortunately, we couldn't be together in real life today, but we always like to pretend in lobby talks that we're meeting in a hotel lobby. It's always where the action's taking place. So, where are we meeting today? What lobby have you taken us to?
This is the lobby of the Windsor Arms Hotel in Toronto, or in the Yorkville area of Toronto. And it was kind of the reason why I'm always fascinated by it. It was really one of the pioneers in boutique hotels, and it was always an upscale boutique hotel that had great service and a wonderful kind of wine bar and champagne bar. And so when I'm in Toronto, it's a great place to relax. It's in the shopping district in central downtown. So I've always really enjoyed it as a respite in the midst of Toronto activity.
Perfect. Sounds great. We'll grab a coffee away from the hustle and bustle of Toronto, and we'll get started. Look, so obviously we've met before, and I'm always impressed by your background. But our first section is called Your Career in 60 Seconds. We always challenge our guests. Can you outline your time in hospitality in a minute? Do you feel up for the challenge?
I will give it a good shot.
Go for it. Over to you.
Sure. Well, I began in hourly jobs, and having done almost every hourly job you can do in hospitality, from washing dishes to waiting tables to sales and marketing, and have just done an endless array of things in the hospitality business. And from there, I was very engaged in food and beverage and became a hotel GM when I was 25 of a fairly significantly sized hotel that had commercial space. There was also 100 extended stay apartments, lots of food and beverage operations. And so that was a kind of great culmination and beginning of my dedication to hospitality, is really that kind of first leadership role. I worked for Playboy Enterprises operating nightclubs for a while. That was all very fascinating. And was the chief operating officer for two different hotel companies, one based in Toronto and one based in New York. And we had a lot of both boutique hotels and independent hotels, as well as franchised properties as well. And that was a fascinating journey with those two organizations. And today, for the last 10 years, I work for a company called Delaware North as their global leader of customer experience. And so focused on all of our various hospitality businesses, from lodging to casinos to food service in venues like Wembley Stadium, and ensuring that our guests have a positive experience and that we continuously work on improving our experience.
Fantastic. I think you just about completed the challenge there. And I guess I'm going to allow myself a follow-up question, because I remember from our first chat, maybe it's the European in me, but I'd never heard of Delaware North. Is it one of these companies that's huge and just always been behind the scenes? Because maybe you could tell us a bit about its size and scale, because it really does feel like it's everywhere and we should all be pretty familiar with it.
Yeah, we operate in the background, so many people don't really know about Delaware North. And so we operate in large sporting venues, we operate in airports, we operate in national parks, and we also operate casinos, regional casinos in the United States and also in Australia. And so you probably never heard of Delaware North. It's a privately held company. We have about 500 million customer transactions in an average year. And we are on 4 different continents. And as I said, we kind of operate in the background. If you go into a stadium and you're getting your food and beverage or buying something in their retail, you don't necessarily think about who's operating that, but it's us. And so it makes for a fascinating business because we are working on behalf of a client. And so it's very important for us to provide a great experience because the consumer, the customer, our guest, doesn't see us as Delaware North. They see us as part of Wembley Stadium, or they see us as part of the Buffalo Bills, or they see it, us as part of Yosemite National Park. And so it provides great opportunity to be successful, but to still kind of be a little anonymous in the background.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think for those people thinking about the hospitality careers as well, it's really important to know that you need to do your research. There are all these kind of companies that are plugged into some of the most exciting brands in the world, and their hospitality businesses at heart, which is brilliant. Good stuff. Okay, so our next section is called Good Day, Bad Day. And we love sharing the stories of hospitality. We know there's highs and lows in everyone's career, and it's a great chance to really bring them to life as well. So perhaps you could take us through, take your pick, either the best or the worst day of your career.
Sure. The worst day is fascinating to me that I recall in my long career is because it wasn't about anything external, that something went wrong in an event or something, bad happened, and we have lots of those things. If you operate in national parks, there's always fires and things that really shut down the whole national park, or other disasters. And so my worst day was about a day in which I had a self-realization from the person who I reported to, who owned the business in several hotels. And I had a person who wasn't very successful in their job role. And we had to make a decision to just separate. It wasn't working for them and it wasn't working for us. And it just wasn't a good fit. And so I don't like doing that anyway. Nobody probably does. And I went and told them I have to let this person go. And, they're not really performing well and they're not really doing a very good job. And the wise owner said, well, tell me where you went wrong. Did you hire the wrong person? Did you not give them the tools that they needed? Did you not give them the training they needed to be successful? And so that was early on in my career, and it really created an impact on me as, oh my God, I've failed this person. And so it was a fascinating self-realization that was in many ways kind of the worst day where I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing a lousy job at this. But also really helped shape how I managed people going forward in the future, because that was very early on. And so I remember that as kind of the worst day, because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm a failure at this. But ultimately how that helped me, greatly in my career. From a best day perspective, I have several of them, and really they're all coordinated around the idea of something new, doing something new. I'm always really hyped by doing that. So opening a new hotel, taking on a new challenge, taking on a new job role. Those are, to me, I can fondly remember, all the hotel openings kind of one by one over the years. And those were really just great days because people came together. They did things that afterwards you look back and said, wow, that was amazing. Like, how did we pull that off? And they worked together so effectively, patiently, and caring about each other, and ultimately also caring about the customer and what they were going to experience. That those are the best memories I have about the hotel business and about our hospitality business today. We have the opportunity sometimes to provide the food and beverage and retail services at something like the Super Bowl. And so that's just a massive, exciting undertaking that is a new challenge that's never going to happen again. And those are the things that I fondly remember as my best days in this business.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I think a lot of hospitality people have similar wiring, and there is this passion for bringing teams together. But I think we also quite like tight deadlines, and there's this sense of there's an impending event, and everything has to be perfect for the event, and then
Right.
eventually it either comes together brilliantly or it doesn't quite come together. But it is what it is. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about something like the Super Bowl. I mean, is that for organizations like Delaware North now, is that formulaic, or is it still as exciting as it sounds to be putting on, what some can say is the greatest show on earth?
Yeah. No, it's always very exciting because at the end of the day, it's always in a different place, and there's always different teams playing, and there's always different things that you can do to create. So the last one that we did, we created an entire retail experience outside of the venue under tents, and opened these stores, brand new stores that were temporary, but were amazing looking from a visual perspective and from a sales perspective. And so it never gets old because it's always a new experience. There's always new teams involved. There's always new food involved. We're very innovative with food. And so we get a lot of public relations attention on all the crazy food things that we dream up. And we were lucky enough in London to do, when American baseball has come over, to do the food and beverage and introduce all these kind of American food ideas into London Stadium. So it's been amazing because every one of them is different, and every one of them has new challenges, and from staffing that amount of people for a one-time event to building things from the ground up. So it never gets old, and it's always different.
Yeah, I think a lot of that difference, just it's exhausting even listening, but it really comes from your blending classic hospitality with dining and then also with events as well. So you've got kind of the thrill of each pillar of our industry, if you like. I'm sure there's a lot
Yeah.
of tech involved as well. Tell us a bit about food innovation. What's some of the big things we should be thinking about in the world of food right now?
Well, it's interesting. So we're constantly researching and listening to our guests about what they like in various places that we conduct business, and there are obviously different types of guests and different demographics in a casino versus a sports venue. One of the things that I always find fascinating about food and food innovation is there's a consistent dialogue about healthy food, right? In sports venues or in casinos or in other places where we conduct business. But if you go and look at our top selling food items, it's always the classic, I'm not going to call it junk food, but it's always the classic kind of comfort foods, burgers and pizza and fries. And that's what people gravitate to. So doing those things well and innovating differences around those. So, for example, we recently created something called the boomstick for baseball, which was a 2-foot long hot dog. And we're like, oh my God, who's going to eat a 2-foot long hot dog? But it was amazingly popular. And what we found was people bought it and then they would share it. They'd cut it up for 3 or 4 people. And so anything that is a twist on old classics, people seem to really enjoy that idea of getting something that's something they're familiar with, but yet has a little bit of a different twist to it. And so a Bloody Mary with the garnish being a mini hamburger, like those are things that people just really gravitate to and love and think are fascinating and interesting and get lots of PR attention.
Yeah, just something a little bit out of the ordinary, right? A bit of a hook that you go, wow, I've just never seen that before. Making
Right.
people look twice in a world that's pretty, full on and everyone's scrolling all the time. Suddenly you see a 2-foot hot dog or a hamburger in a glass and you're like, oh, I should probably stop and check this out. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. So our next section we call Last Day on Earth. And obviously we don't want to be too morbid or downbeat, but, were the pressure on and you had 24 hours left to enjoy the best hospitality in the world, I'd love to know, kind of what your thoughts would be around hotels, restaurants, events. Maybe we start with hotels. Where would you stay, Bradley, for your last stay on Earth?
It's fascinating. I was thinking a little bit about this, and all the places I travel, and because of our business and for other reasons and for personal travel, I get to travel kind of all over the world, and I still gravitate to New York City. I was thinking when I knew you were going to pose this question, And after thinking, I'm like, I have never stayed in the Plaza in New York. This iconic Plaza Hotel that with a storied past and a tremendous history and an amazing location. And so that's where I would really, they have a wonderful presidential suite, and that would be, an absolutely amazing place to stay. I love New York, being in New York, and that really would be, my pick. Because I think, one, I haven't stayed there yet, and two, it has a tremendous location in New York, and of course a tremendous reputation. From a food perspective, you'd have to have lunch in the Oak Room at the Plaza. Where else would you dine if you were in New York City and going to have lunch? And we're already staying at the Plaza. And I'm also a restaurant in New York that I haven't gone to is Per Se, which is Thomas Keller's restaurant in the city. And I'm not even sure if it's back open yet. But just an amazing experience. The food, of course, is fantastic. But what is the icing on the cake is the experience and the staff and the interaction and the discussions and the way in which the food is presented. That would be, my choice if I had to choose a last meal. That would probably be it, because it's not just a meal. It is an amazing experience beyond the food. And so that's really a place that I'm fascinated with visiting.
And what is it about someone like Per Se that really elevates that level of experience and service, do you think? For those people, running restaurants or working in restaurants right now, thinking, we need to up our game. What are some of the lessons you think they could take from some of these world-class establishments?
Well, really, from my view, it's really twofold. I think the one thing that Thomas Keller does very successfully is ensures that he hires the right people with an appropriate service-minded attitude. And I think that those people are exceptionally well trained to not only understand the functions of their job, how to serve people correctly and how to serve people in a way in which it's not belittling you as the server, but it's recognizing that you are of service to those people. And that's what I do every day. I'm of service to other people. And so I think that those are two hooks that really make the difference for them, is the idea that they focus on hiring people who are very service minded, and that's their way in which they operate their lives. And then I think that they focus on their education, not only in service, but in the food. They so understand the food and how it's been prepared, and they've tasted the food. And so it's the way in which they kind of introduce things to you and help you they really are a guide. They guide you through that dining experience. And I think that's what makes them very successful. Because I think you can probably get equally good food in many places, but I think what you can't always get is the service.
Yeah. And you tap into a really interesting point there, I think, around service, because I think the way you were framing that is actually, it really is a source of pride. And as a guest, that's one of the reasons you go there. There is this respect for the servers and the expertise. And I think what a lesson to employers and restaurateurs everywhere. If we can start to put that mindset into our staff, and more importantly, put that mindset into our guests, we have a chance to move away from some of the, frankly, horror stories you hear of, people not having any patience at all, and an increase in the level of rudeness at events and in hotels and restaurants, which is sad for all of us when we're trying to rebuild the industry.
Yeah. And today, is especially challenging. We have a large company with typically about 60,000 associates, and we also work with charitable groups, which is sometimes around 30,000 people in a season, who come and represent Delaware North to our guests. And so that's a lot of people. And in today's challenge, it's challenging to find people. It's certainly a challenge to find the right people. And that's frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for the guest. It's frustrating for the associate who may be working under pressure because perhaps they're short-staffed, or if from a supply chain perspective, it's hard to get some of the things that you want to serve or sell to your guests. And so it is a big challenge, and one that we work hard to solve, and I'm sure our competitors work very hard to solve, and everyone in the hospitality industry is working hard to solve. But it is a challenging time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's time to come together a little bit as well and learn from each other and learn from the best, right? So what is it that these most amazing restaurants are doing? What is it that people who are still managing to hire are doing? And I think we're seeing a lot of that in Europe, is a higher level of collaboration between businesses, and sharing ideas around, frankly, staff wellness and retention. And I'm sure it's the same in the States. So let's keep collaborating, sharing ideas. Can't go wrong with that approach.
Yeah, I think it's helping businesses and business owners focus on running their business better. And I think it's helping them focus, which is a benefit to the associates that work there, more, and understanding the connection between their associates and their experience and the guest and their experience.
Yeah, love it. Fantastic. So our next section we call the guest book. And the guest book is really about this idea that, look, everyone in hospitality who's got a level of experience has got something to share. And it's so important that we share that advice, just like when you leave a hotel and you leave a review or you leave your top tips for the next guest. So would love if you could take a few minutes, Bradly, and share your guest book experience. What would you leave behind for the next generation, if you like?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of two things. When I was talking about kind of my worst day, it is that idea that as a leader in this business, you're responsible for the success of your business and your people. And so hiring and training and giving people the tools necessary, but to understand that you're responsible for those things. I think the other words of wisdom or things that I live by is really kind of 4 principles in terms of operating a business, whether it's a hospitality business or any business. And it's been my experience and research that I've done and in working with clients and working here at Delaware North, is the idea that there's really 4 pieces of a puzzle, and especially in hospitality. And that the first piece of that puzzle is leadership. You have to focus on having good leaders, developing those leaders, giving them the skills and the tools they need to be successful. And they have to be really of a mindset that takes care of the team members and that also takes care of the guest. And that is their driving force. What I often say is you have to ask yourself, when you make decisions as a leader, one question before all other questions. And that question is, how does that impact my guest or customer? That's the first gate. And if you can get past that gate, you can ask yourself thousands of other questions if you want to. How does that impact my business? How does that impact my profitability? How does that impact anything? And so that whole idea of leadership and being focused on the customer and your associate is really that kind of first puzzle piece. And then the next puzzle piece that I talk with people about often is the idea of associates. If you don't have good associates, you'll never deliver great experiences. And so focusing on engaging them, focusing on valuing them, focusing on them, making them a part of your business. The commonality when I talk to companies that say, "Oh, we're not having any staffing challenges," A, they tend to be smaller organizations, but B, they also were focused on their team members long before COVID. They were focused on making their team members have great experiences every day and being part of their family, whether they're a corporation or a family-owned business. And so that idea of associates is really that second component that, from an advice perspective, I would tell people one really needs to focus on. The third piece is the idea of partners. So you're going to have partners in your business. Sometimes you have a client you're working for. You have people that you buy products from, vendors, suppliers, and having a view of win-win partnerships is what will make you successful. If you have a view that somebody's going to win, or I'm trying to have one over on this particular vendor, ultimately what's going to happen is somebody will lose, but sometimes that might be you. So having a win-win mentality with your partners is a very important component of success and is necessary in the hospitality business, especially. If you have a vendor that you haven't treated well and you have supply chain issues like you have today, they're going to take care of the people that have had a good partnership with them. And then the last piece of that puzzle, some people think about this as the first piece of the puzzle, but it's really about then managing the customer experience. What level of service do they get? How do you design the experiences and interactions they have, whether they're online or in person or through a third party? How do you design those experiences so they help the guest reach their goal, right? So whatever their goal is, to have a great vacation, to make a reservation, in that interaction, what's their goal and how are you going to help them reach that goal? And manage their journey and manage the experience that they have to a point where it is a positive experience and they reach the goals that they wanted to reach. So my general advice when people ask me is always along those lines, that it's very important to focus on your leadership, to focus on your associates, to focus on win-win partnerships, and then to focus on the experience that your customers have, because that is what will ultimately make a successful hospitality business.
Yeah, amazing. I think there's a huge amount of wisdom there to unpack. I suppose one place I'd love to start, I know you have a passion for customer experience from the time with Atollo, but that being such an important part of it, what are some of the building blocks of designing that customer experience? If I'm running a restaurant today or I'm running a hotel, what might be some of the starting places I could look to think, actually, I need to go through that journey?
I think a lot of business managers or business owners really focus on their preferences, what they feel they like, or what they think customers might like. And so what I always talk to people about is that's great. And that you may be 100% spot on to what the customer is looking for. But let's verify that or perhaps disprove that by actually understanding the customer and what they want and what their goals are. And that really becomes the foundational piece to being successful. So if I understand what you want and I'm able to deliver on that, and then if I'm able to deliver that better than other people, I'm going to have an extremely successful business. So the first thing of managing the experience is to really understand, what does that guest want? And then to understand, well, how does that guest interact with us? And which is a practice kind of typically known as journey mapping. And so what are all the interactions that they have? And within those interactions, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 that are the most important interactions. And there's probably going to be some along the way that you do great and some along the way that you don't do very well. So understanding that journey and being able to fix the things that aren't going well, and really focus on those top couple of things that the customers are really measuring your success by, then you can really focus on that experience and that journey and ultimately understand the persona, who your customer is, or who 3 or 4 typical customer types might be. And so when we talk about managing the customer experience, it's really first understanding that customer and their persona, understanding what their goals are and really understanding and what they're trying to achieve, and then really understanding the journey that they have with you. Then you can really start to redesign things so that they can have a successful experience and you can have a loyal customer.
Yeah. Makes sense. I think that's fantastic. I think for those of us that have heard that kind of stuff before, it's great to have the reminder, because how often do we get busy just dealing with what's in front of us and not stopping to do that check? And then I think for those of us that's the first time we've heard it, hopefully a really nice way to think about, whatever experience you're trying to do, whether it's a one-man show, whether it's a big operation, whether it's a whole chain of hotels or operations. Right. Fantastic.
And you don't need millions of dollars to do research. You can just ask your customers.
Yeah, I think that's...
In a big organization like ours, we have lots of money to do research, and we can really get into the fine details. But simply talking to your customers, if you're a guy who runs a hot dog stand on the street corner, asking customers what they like, what they don't like, how we could make it better, that's all the research you need.
Yeah, exactly. What were you doing just before this? What will you be doing next? All that really good stuff.
Right.
Lovely. Look, Bradley, unfortunately, I could go on for hours, but unfortunately we have reached the end of Lobby Talks today and our time together. So I suppose as we check out of this wonderful lobby that you brought us to, I guess my key thing here is that there's definitely a big piece around looking after your people. There's a big piece around being deliberate about your customer experience and also being deliberate about yourself as a leader and where you go. I think taking the time to step away from what is very reactive and SOS as an industry is probably that critical starting point. So thanks for reminding us of that. And I think there's some really useful tools and tips there. It's been great working with you today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed and I appreciate the invitation to talk with you.
Fantastic. Look, for those of us listening, do head to myatolo.com. Bradley and our other mentors are definitely there for quick catch-ups or more formal mentoring circles. We've got a range of kind of community and connections going on. It's a really vibrant community. We're going to be back for Lobby Talks next week. We're working with Jenna O'Connor, who is a fantastic life coach, on Tuesday, and then I'm chatting to Sam Riches on Thursday, all about sales and marketing. So it's going to be a really, really fun schedule ahead of us. But for now, all I can do is obviously say a big thank you to you, Bradley, for your time. I think it's been a great session. I'm sure we've all learned a lot, and I'm sure I'll catch you at something soon. Thanks for your help.
Thank you.